If you're building with AI without these 4 requirements documents, you're gonna have a hard time. You're setting yourself up for the prompting feedback loop of death, as I like to call it. In this video, a former Gartner analyst with 40 years of experience in enterprise tech joins us to reveal a framework that will change everything if you're a solopreneur with no experience in development, but you see the potential of building with AI and you've already started learning how to vibe code.
Yeah, so PRDs are great. We want to use PRDs, and oftentimes our AI partners can produce a lot of content and stuff that into a PRD that may not necessarily be helpful for us as solopreneurs. So one of the things I wanted to do with this micro workshop today is actually work through some of the mechanics around what actually are the different types of requirements documents that we see. How do those relate to people on development teams? And what are the impacts on us as solopreneurs who are going to be out here building things?
Now, Ken doesn't need to be here. He's got a full-time gig. He's a professional. But after 40 years of watching products fail in their own ways, he's become passionate about helping others to not let it keep happening. And what a perfect time as AI starts taking over all these different aspects of our lives, so solopreneurs, entrepreneurs like you and me can learn how to do development right without actually knowing how to code.
Thinking about it from a roles perspective is actually very important for us. Why? Well, in a more substantial development organization, you have certain roles that need to get played. So the first off is the product manager. And I'm representing the product manager as the top of the stack. Why? Because ultimately, the product manager is responsible for the interaction with the business, like understanding what the business needs and owning the business requirements for whatever is going to get built. They also will be responsible for the roadmap. So whatever is going to be built in the future, the timing and the parameters around which those things need to be built, okay, that's going to be the responsibility of the product manager. So they are primarily our conduit to the outside world. The next role we'll take a look at on the far left here is the product marketer. So the product marketer goes through and thinks about the customer. So they have primary responsibility for interaction with the customer, capturing a requirement, validating a requirement, looking at what the needs are, and being able to represent those in a form where we can now have a conversation about it. That ultimately gets handed off to a product developer who says, okay, based upon these requirements and what we need to build, that the product manager said, this is now the thing that's going to get built. The product developer has to translate that into, well, gee, what kind of infrastructure do we need? What does the technical stack look like? And what are we going to do? In what order? How long is it going to take? How much is it going to cost? So the product developer has to answer those questions. And the other one, which is often quite, I won't say elusive, but is really kind of given short shrift, especially in a corporate context, is the product operator. Now, this is often referred to as infrastructure and operations or just operations, but I'm calling it product operator because literally that's what they do. So once a developer builds something, it needs to get deployed, right? It needs to get put into an environment so that it can actually be served up, and the consumer, those people that actually use the app or service, can get access to it and use that ongoingly. We need all of these 4 roles, or actually, in our case as solopreneurs, we need the 4 perspectives in order to be thinking about things in the right way. And this is important. Why? Because ultimately it influences the requirements conversation that we need to have. Now going on to the requirements, the hierarchy of requirements, if we start off at the PRD, we're going to answer an important question. What does the product need to do to be able to satisfy market and business needs? And this is where we literally fuse the external view that the customer sees, as well as the internal views, like who our team members are that we're collaborating with that need to provide their inputs. So these are going to be around user stories, it's going to be around features, it's going to be around priorities. But thinking about it in terms of like, okay, I'm now a solopreneur and I need to fulfill all 4 of these roles. So at this point, we're really only fulfilling a portion of it.
Now, I don't know about you, but I normally only create the PRD. I've created these other documents, but I haven't really followed them, and I haven't made all of them at the right time. It actually makes me want to start over on some of my favorite projects. But perhaps you know the pain of having to start over because you don't have good enough requirements documents that can help communicate with your AI partner what needs to be done.
What we can actually now start to look at is looking at a business requirements document. And this is one of those things that if we are narrowly focused on the PRD, we might actually be doing ourselves a disservice. Why? Well, what does the business need? Why are we doing this? What is our connection to ourselves as an entity? What do we need to be sure of that we're building that is going to have this be actually sustainable, relevant in the marketplace? So, our goals, our success criteria, any key constraints. Think about this in terms of like the cost of goods sold. And if we don't actually understand cost of goods sold, we might have a hard time doing product pricing. Or we might actually find that we're enthusiastic about a market, we have a great idea, and we can't actually offer that at a price which is actually reasonable for the target that we're going after or that particular market, so that we could end up building something which actually just sits on the shelf because we can't offer it at the right price to be able to have the market be saying, okay, great, I need that. Let me buy in. So understanding the business requirements is an important prerequisite but for being able to decide on what ultimately product functionality needs to get built. And if we're just starting with the idea and then saying, okay, now build the product requirements, we might actually be doing ourselves some real harm. The next piece of the requirements chain in the hierarchy is that of the market requirements document. So when I think about the area that we're playing in, what is it that the customer or the market actually needs or is literally demanding that you build in order to be able to satisfy it? So this is a very much an external focus around what the opportunity is, who's your competition, what does the pricing look like, what unmet needs are there different approaches to how to actually meet those needs. So understanding the market is an important part of what we would need to do as a solopreneur in order to be able to ensure that we've built the right thing, or we're thinking about the right thing. We're thinking about who the ideal customer profile is, how that translates into as a business, how we're going to support them, what level of engagement and interactivity is required. And that those two things actually flow down and help us go through and define what our product requirements are. How asynchronous can these be? These can actually be quite asynchronous because you can find that you go through and do a little market research, thinking about either what the customer need is, what the functionality is, and then all of a sudden you get into it and find out that there's a whole bunch of other players that are doing things that are the same. You don't have an idea into like what is your unique selling proposition that you're going to be able to take on that would have your offer be attractive as opposed to the rest of the market. So that would in turn influence what our business requirements are, ultimately coming down to influence product requirements. The next thing is around the product requirements. So traditionally, this is owned by people in development, right? So that we're going to make decisions about the tech stack. Now, you'll notice I've got this slightly offset from product development, leaning towards operations. The important part here is that operations often, at least in a corporate context, does not get I guess you might say, the level of input that they necessarily require in order to be able to make good infrastructure decisions, as in terms of deciding which services, whether it's cloud-based, whether it's on-premises, or some sort of hybrid operation where the PRD now needs to be shipped over, where the operations now needs to, okay, great. I know what you've built. I know what it takes to run it. So now we're going to configure the environment so that we can actually deploy into it. And then we can provide our operations and maintenance tasks as we go along. So the next piece of the hierarchy of requirements is the feature requirement. Okay, so each of these could actually be thought of as an independent document, but we want to be able to link them up. So there's traceability between the different layers. And the feature requirements document is important for a number of reasons, because essentially we're describing on a very granular basis, how is the system going to behave, both from an administrative perspective, like if you have an admin role that needs to actually manage the system and all the users and what they're doing, how does that function? What do you need? What does the admin need to see? How should they be interacting with it and being able to help customers as they're using the product? From the customer's perspective, what is their user experience like? How does something need to function? So is there an onboarding pathway? Is there a certain set of steps that they need to be walked through in order to set up their account so that it's easy, that we are not introducing friction and ultimately causing problems that people go, you know, this is just too clunky. I'm out. We want to retain our customers, so it needs to be functional in order for us to be able to do this. The other thing that we want to be able to use this for, because we're capturing technical or system level details, is, and specifically this is like the how of like how the application functions. So when we do testing, when we do validation, these things go into helping us build test scripts. And it doesn't matter whether you are actually doing the testing yourself or whether you're having your AI partner actually execute those tests on your behalf. We still need to know, okay, what are those things? What is it doing? How is it working? And also, if we don't have that, we're only going to be working off of subjective criteria with regards to, well, is performance actually going to be able to meet what the customer need is? How long does it take for a screen to pop? How long does it take to return a data set? Is it working the way that it should?
Now, Ken's about to drop a bomb about what happens when you don't use this framework, but first off, I just want to let you know that this call happened on the AI Captain's School. We do this every week. There's a free 7-day trial, so you can actually join us for one, free of charge, and if you like the school happenings, stick around. We'd love to see you. But if you're trying to learn how to vibe code, trying to build with AI, build a business with AI, if you're a solopreneur, I highly recommend checking it out. We talk a lot about this stuff, and there's a lot of material to learn how to do these kinds of requirements documents in action.
The next thing, which is basically where I'm going to kind of wrap this up, is the risks to the solopreneur. So if we don't actually consider the entire stack and doing a decent job of like thinking through each of the component parts in a very deliberative manner, we might actually miss some really essential parts of what we need in order to be able to ensure that what we're going to offer and put out into the marketplace has the right fit. It's targeted to a very specific ideal customer profile that we've targeted, saying that this person that has these characteristics, these attributes, it's going to fit their need really, really well. And it also helps us ensure that we're not making bad decisions so that we end up building something which is really unsustainable from our perspective of, yeah, I can build it, but now I can't operate it. And I can tell you from the number of customers I've worked with over the course of my career, this is probably one of the single biggest issues where people look at the price tag for building something, but really don't take into account the actual cost of delivery and operations over time, because that could be a real killer. The next piece is around overloading the PRD. So Claude or whoever your agent is that you're working with can actually provide a lot of stuff. And if we don't go through and actually think through some of these things, we could actually be making more work for both ourselves as well as for our AI partner. The other thing that we risk doing is actually building something which is more of a monolith as opposed to something which is actually more modular in construction, so that we can understand how to properly partition it across the different tiers we might be using. Because you might actually come up for deployment architecture, which is a combination of, sure, I might have a React component, you might have server-side component, you might have a client-side component where some processing gets done. You also might have an N8N instance, or you might have some other technology that you got API level access to that's a third-party service where you get data from. So you need to think through all of those pieces in terms of like, where's it going to come from? And architecture has a pretty significant impact on performance, as well as potentially cost. So if we don't think through those things and start considering what the impacts of our decisions are, we might find that we built this thing that, okay, it works, it's functional, but if I try to change it, all of a sudden something breaks. Why? Because now we haven't given thought to, well, gee, where does that behavior live? And how can I isolate that so that it's more robust in the face of change? So modularity and your architectural choices are pretty important to consider. And finally, the behavioral cues. This is actually quite related to the architectural comment as well, because you might say there's a certain way I want this to work, but is your choice of stack actually going to be the right choice to be able to support that functional model? Maybe, may not. You might want to have something which is, well, I'm going to start off and I'm going to develop on the web, but now I want to be able to use that for both Android and an iOS deployment. Well, is React Native actually going to help you get there? Or do you need to do something different in order to be able to build that app out? And the cost of having to go through and rework and refactor not only your business logic, but also the data access layers could be significant. So again, long-term cost is something we need to consider. And by doing a better job of actually looking at those different layers of requirements and spending a little time with each to make sure that we're getting it right, we can actually have more focused interactions with our AI partner and end up with something that actually is a better long-term choice for what we want to take and build out.
I'm just going to chime in here and say, like, this whole presentation is everything I've been learning the hard way the last like 6-7 months, you know, all the way down to that last like poor technical stack choices. Even the modularity, like in some ways I've built a couple monoliths, like the directories,
Yeah.
and got really good results. And then I've also tried to build, like you've said, a black box and then add N8N workflows to be modular.
Yeah.
But then it requires, like, the thing about the monolith is it's easier to receive error notifications from the
Sure.
server and like have fallbacks set compared to connecting it to N8N.
Yeah.
So if something goes wrong with the N8N workflow, you need to have little like runoffs for each place where it could go wrong. And so it communicates back to your app. And
Yeah.
it's kind of annoying. And so I'm like, I kind of would rather just like have a monolith situation for like something like that. But then at the same time, if you have an N8N workflow and you want to add complete like feature segments to it, it's so much easier than just vibe coding it or coding it or whatever it is. Like you have a total graphical user interface to just add more nodes and just change things around. So I do think, even like Dino, you've been asking me about how do we make an SEO agent bot. And N8N is a great tool for that. You just got to chain them. So you chain the first agent to say, do this research. The second agent, okay, strategize upon this research. The third agent, okay, analyze the competition. The fourth agent, start organizing the writing. The fifth agent, write it, right? All of that is like super simple to do, like with N8N, and you just press play. And it's only if you want to turn it into a SaaS or something where you really want to consider the monolithic black box or something. So I'm rambling a little bit, but a lot of this, it's good to know what the options are, because then when you fail, which is inevitable, you think you just suck at this and you can't do it, when really you just don't know how to do it right. And that's what I've been going through this whole year. So,
and this is not to say that the monolithic model, you don't build monoliths. No, that's not actually the case. It might actually turn out that that's actually the right way for you to develop something.
Depends what it is.
Yeah. Well, so in terms of product market fit, so you start off with, is there an area that you're interested in playing in, right? So what's the area you're potentially interested in doing your directory around?
I didn't choose the niche yet.
Yeah. So in the last community call we had, we walked through an example where Jordan led us through the conversation around how to use basically Claude Code as our mechanism for being able to work. Okay, we're going to take lawyers in Miami. So you're now picking out a domain area, and then you're getting more specific around it. So what could you do for that particular customer profile in that geography? So you would start out at the top level, meaning, okay, this is the area that I want to work. Now, what's important to the people in that area? What are they having problems with? Those are the kind of conversations that we're now having and doing our research on. So whether that's actually going out and scraping data, whether that's just talking with your LLM, whether that's actually going in actively, you driving the train and driving the client, saying, getting into something like Reddit and going into the typical areas where people hang out that talk about that stuff and getting a sense for how the customer's thinking. And then, like you from your SEO background, what are you doing finding your keywords, and where are the people hanging out that are using those keywords? That's where you're going to start your journey around market fit, so that as you get to the point where you're like, okay, great, I understand the area, I understand what people are talking about in terms of their pain points and problems. Being able to craft that ideal customer profile, say, this is the person that is likely to buy the thing I want to build. The more work that you do with that, instead of like, well, this is, everybody would want to buy this. No, you're not selling to everybody. You want to target an ICP. So you have a better shot at being able to do your work, of being able to say, hey, I can now optimize and start targeting the individual that would probably really need and respond well to this particular offer.
Yeah, and I just sent you the video of last week's call, Axe, on school. But yeah, you can do this research really easy now. It's really, you can scrape Reddit, LinkedIn, wherever you believe those people are hanging out. You can really find out the exact. You can find out if your idea has any legs.
Yeah,
because you can find the exact pain points that these people are experiencing and how, and if you believe, oh, this idea I have can solve their pain, then you can get actual proof of that by scraping the internet intelligently. And then you're not just shooting in the dark. And I think part of what Kenneth's presentation here today is about, like, yeah, part one here, if you omit this essential element of your market fit and your avatar definition, your ICP, like, then you don't know if there's actually people there that would pay money for your product or that would find your idea as a solution to anything. And otherwise, you're just putting something out there thinking it's a good idea, but with no data behind it to back it. So fortunately, it's really easy to demonstrate if the idea is worth it or not now. You can do it in an hour or two.
And why would you actually want to take and build out something in code if you could actually build the equivalent capability in N8N, host it yourself, run it, and be able to have that be compelling? Well, it might be a performance issue. It might be a cost issue. It might be a complexity issue. I want to be able to set myself up and the people that I'm working with to be able to now make intelligent choices about what their application architecture looks like, and not just, well, hey, I can bring you N8N. No, I want to be able to bring you a range of different solutions to be able to meet your business need. And in that way, I actually become more valuable than somebody that is a one-trick pony. Yeah, you can come in and rock N8N. Great. Happy for you. But is that going to be the be-all, end-all? No. And one of the things I can say after having been over 40 years in technology, stuff changes. Be ready to pivot when stuff changes. And getting these skills down is the thing that will provide you that insulation so that you can stay out on the leading edge of where the earning capability is, as opposed to, oh, well, I learned this thing and now nobody's using it anymore. I don't want to find myself in there, nor would I want you to find yourself in that situation.
My whole thing is like, no, I think you got to learn everything, get really good at it, and stay open to what's coming around and build your stack that is super powerful, but also super adaptable. So to boil everything away to the key points is, as a solopreneur working with AI, you have to wear 4 hats: the product manager hat, the product marketer hat, the product developer hat, and the product operator hat. And it might seem intimidating, but with AI at your fingertips, it's a lot more attainable than you may think, or it may have been just a year ago. It's truly crazy what's going on. Thank you to Kenneth Gonzalez for joining us and sharing this wisdom. Hit that subscribe button if you're learning how to build with AI, learning how to vibe code. This is a never-ending journey, and the more perspective you can get, the better your products will be. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.